was removed and sent to another state, banished, because he followed what was in Scripture. So that led me, down the path to enlightenment. And I have to say, I thank Brother Gangas, because if it wasn't for him, I probably would have never wakened up and escaped from Jehovah land that these people live in. So essentially, that was the beginning of my awakening. The other part that leads to the occult connection was around the early 90s, around 93, 94. I started to discern that they were implementing mind control techniques in the literature. It was very apparent. I was surprised that more people didn't observe it as I had. And when I seen it progress more and more, and I'll give you a simple example, because some of you are saying, what are you talking about, mind control techniques? Well, what I was seeing, and it was becoming a repeated pattern, was they would have a study in which they would read material in, let's say, some paragraphs or a page or two of a book they were covering, and they would start asking questions which were not answered there in those paragraphs. They were training you. It was to predictively give the responses, have loading and so I started seeing that phenomenon more and more. Even though the facts are not there, you will still recite, which you know you should when you're asked these questions. And as I seen that pattern continue, I knew something was wrong. And of course, the lid was blown off of it. I think what they were doing at that time is that leadership in the Watchtower had hired specialists in the field of mind control, or let's call it a softer word, social engineering. And they learned that you can train a target population to become cognitive dissonant, meaning that what is placed right in front of your face no longer affects your views and opinions. You become highly resistant to being affected by facts that are contrary to what the hive leaders, the cult leaders, tell you. And so I started seeing that phenomenon more and more, and that led me on the path that ultimately helped me to escape. Of course, only with the grace of God can you ever escape from that cult. I'm convinced of that now. And that led me, that was my first step. Now, I didn't know anything about the occult at that time. What happened as far as the occult goes is that after investigating the attacks of the September 11th, 2001, I'm an engineer. My background is I'm a structural engineer, and I designed buildings and bridges, and I knew well that what the public was being told about the collapse of those towers was completely and intentionally false information that was being spread. It was impossible for a modern steel structure reinforced with concrete and fireproofing to collapse. I don't care if it was a dozen airplanes that hit a high-rise tower. It's not enough heat to melt steel beams and columns that are very often 3 or 4 inches thick at the base. So that started me down the rabbit hole, which we don't have, of course, time to go into tonight, of investigating what had happened. And what I found out was that there was an occult network that has been building this new world order, and that these occult leaders, these occult groups have been around for quite some time. I'm going to mention around the time of the French Revolution, but they go back prior to that. Freemasonry had its origins around the early 1800s in England. Other forms of masonry, Scottish Rite Freemasonry, many of you might be surprised, doesn't go back thousands of years, as many of these people claim without any historical basis. Scottish Rite Freemasonry was created in the year 1815 by the Grand Master, 33rd degree Freemason Albert Pike, and Giuseppe Mazzini, which was his counterpart in Italy. That opened my eyes up because I started looking into these secret societies, and it led me to the connection between C.T. Russell. I kind of stumbled on it, and the leaders, some of very extremely prominent members of these secret societies right here in New York City. One of them was Samuel Untermeyer, belonged to the Knights of the Golden Circle, which is one that you'll never hear mentioned in any of the books or virtually none of the books that cover secret societies, but it was one of the most prominent. Knights of the Golden Circle was the secret conspiratorial group that had set up the assassination of President Lincoln. And that's now known. That's provable. We have the notes that were sent to agents such as August Belmont and Judah P. Benjamin, in which were distributed by Knights of the Golden Circle. And they had agents in even the U.S. Post Office back then, so that letters and communications would not be intercepted. But in any case, Russell was directly connected to him. And I found that out when I went to a library one day. I was searching for other information, but I happened to say, hey, here's a shelf that covers Russell. And I seen C.T. Russell. And the name of the book, I believe, was Charles Taze Russell and the New York Hippodrome speeches of 1908 to 1910, 1911. And when I started researching it, I said, wait a minute, Russell is being driven and financed, he's being picked up and chauffeured to the New York Hippodrome by a man named Frank Goldman. And he is working under this very powerful member of the Knights of the Golden Circle. So I started researching Russell and going further down that rabbit hole. One time, maybe tonight, if you'd like, we can take a little segue into the connection, which is absolutely verifiable, that I found that C.T. Russell was a member of the Rosicrucian Society, AMORC, the American Rosicrucian Society. I have a letter, or an email that was sent to me by the president of AMORC that confirms this. I also have a copy from a book that I also unearthed in my research, which was written by a woman in the 1920s that lived in New York City, that was married to a very prominent member of the Knights of the British, I think it's the Knights of the British Empire, yes. Her name was Lady Queensberry, and his name was Baron Hugh Paget. He later became the treasurer of the United Nations. By the way, you'll find out that almost all the heads of these powerful multinational organizations, think tanks, Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, and on and on and on, are all members of these secret societies. And this was the case that I found out. And Russell was certainly connected to them through a copy of a photograph that was taken, a photographic copy of the registry from Scotland. Now, most people would not be able to get into the Scottish Order of Freemasonry's headquarters and have them allow their registry to be brought out to them. That is simply prohibited. It would never happen. But because her husband was who he was, they allowed her access, and she has a photograph in the book that is called Occult Theocracy of Charles Taze Russell's name with the 3 pyramid-shaped dots next to it, which means he was a high-ranking member of Freemasonry. So anyway, that's just a nutshell explanation of my connection to Russell. There is much more to unearth. For instance, here's one that might make your head spin when I tell you. I have compelling evidence that Russell was involved with the conspirators. If you know the book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, it's a very famous book about the setting up of the Federal Reserve System, which is a major plank of their global New World Order. And Russell was actually involved with the events that led to the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank by his financial malfeasance and embezzlement of funds from the Knickerbocker Trust in New York City. What they did is they caused a bank to go bust, a major bank in New York City to go bust. And in doing so, they had their players, meaning the Masonic secret society players that were involved with it, were the ones that, let's say, would draw money out and not return it so that the bank would go bust, become insolvent. Russell was one of them. So I said, here we go again with Russell. Not only involved with the Knights of the Golden Circle by giving those speeches at the New York Hippodrome, funded, and by the way, funding of the Brooklyn headquarters was not, I found, from the sale of his father's clothing stores in Allegheny and I believe Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That was a cover story because the financing that would have been produced, the funds produced, would not have been enough to purchase the just one of the smallest buildings in Brooklyn, let alone a complex that was outfitted with printing equipment and all kinds of facilities in order to house thousands of people. That funding came from the member of the Knights of the Golden Circle, Samuel Untermeyer. And again, we don't have time to go into why Untermeyer was using Russell. We'll save that for another program. But I will leave you with this. It had to do with the Watchtower Society was co-opted by this much more powerful group, Knights of the Golden Circle and New World Order occultist secret societies that were plotting to set up this global takeover, this global New World Order, which origins go back to around the time of the French Revolution. And in 1776, particularly May 1st, 1776, the creation of the Bavarian Illuminati. And so since 1776, which interestingly enough, for those out there with a spiritual worldview as I have, isn't it interesting that at the time the Bavarian Illuminati was created, it was only 2 months. It was so close in proximity to this republic being formed on July 4th, 1776. And I'm going to tell you that's no accident. Those dates do not coincide just because it was a scheduling snafu. It was specifically done because those leading those secret societies knew full well that this republic was in its birth pangs, and they were trying to head off and create an alternative movement that was going to be just the opposite of what the nation was founded on, meaning this was a free republic based on biblical principles, liberties and freedoms and opportunities for upward mobility, where their New World Order, I refer to as an Antichrist New World Order, is based on a system of global tyranny, servitude, and serfdom. And that is essentially where they want to take us. So their main enemy has always been the Constitution of the United States and the Christian principles upon which it was based. So the conspirators started their modern day push around 1776. It precedes that century, but that's where it really began. And we began to see the outbreak of revolution shortly after that. Remember the French Revolution, 1789, only a decade or so later. And then shortly after that, we had Karl Marx writing the Communist Manifesto and the revolution throughout Europe in 1848, all over Europe. Fortunately, they were put down. And then we had revolutions again, the first one being, well, actually, there was more than one in Russia, but the previous revolutionary pushes failed until the Bolsheviks took over in 1917 in the October Revolution, which was followed by other attempted revolutions in places like Germany, after World War I, Hungary, Spain. Unfortunately, they were put down. I believe right now, and let me make this statement clear and unequivocally, we are in that I am blowing this out of proportion by making references to Satanism and the occult and because the mockery of Jesus Christ is something. If you know about the Satanic Church, if you know about Anton LaVey and Aleister Crowley and what they do at their churches, a satanic black mass has everything to do with the mockery of Jesus Christ, the offending of Jesus Christ, showing disdain for the blood of Christ and the cup that you're supposed to partake of his body and then his blood. So this is how they operate. This is the calling card. If an organization has been, in fact, infiltrated by people that are secretly practicing Satanists, which I'm absolutely convinced is the case. As a matter of fact, let me say this about C.T. Russell's death on October 31st, 1916, I believe the date was. Again, you probably don't know this because you haven't spent years researching these groups, but I have. And you'll find out that it is very common in these groups that when someone nears the hour of death, for that person, a member of that satanic cult, to be ritually sacrificed on one of the occult's high calendar days. And Halloween is one of the highest calendar days of the year. And I believe Russell, and that's why he was dressed up. And remember when they found him inside that Roman, wearing the Roman toga? If you've seen the film Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick, that film is a very close adaptation of what is done inside these groups. And I don't mean just the Church of Satan. I mean the very powerful elite that have these secret meetings. Many of them are orgies, but they also include rituals. And so you'll actually see it if you watch that film. And by the way, just so you know, the filmmaker was murdered not at the release of that film, right after it was screened in Hollywood. Kubrick died, I believe, about a week after that. And I believe he knew what he was doing was very dangerous, because Stanley Kubrick would not leave his estate in England. I don't know if it was in Rotherham, but he would not leave his estate. Neither his wife or children would leave. So, you know, this is the way the occult operates. And I've seen over and over again, even around us, symbols. I'll give you one simple one, the dollar bill. If you look at that all-seeing eye pyramid on the dollar bill, most of you know about it. It's been covered on the internet. Many people, Alex Jones, many of these conspiracy theory broadcasters will go into it. But I'm going to tell you, there's a lot more beneath that dollar bill that I've unearthed. You know, again, some of this is not my own research. It's others who have spent years themselves researching it. And I'll give you one. I wish I had one to blow up. Maybe when I come back on next time, I'm going to bring you an enlargement. That pyramid with the all-seeing eye, the eye, they call it the eye of providence, but it's not. It's the eye of Lucifer that's on top of that pyramid. If you notice, it's hovering above the pyramid, and that's not just because some artist thought that it would look interesting to have it above that pyramid. The reason that it's hovering above is because it's symbolic that those that are the architects of this global New World Order, which was hatched on May 1st, 1776, know that it is ultimately being orchestrated by invisible powers, those which the book of Ephesians speaks about, that we should expose the powers, the realms of darkness. And they know that. And as a matter of fact, they've actually made references to it. I'll mention one in a moment after I finish what I'm going to tell you that is striking. So they knew that these powers were guiding them. And so what they did is that just as when a pirate takes over a vessel and hoists up its skull and bones flag, the Jolly Lantern they call it, this is what Satanists do when they take over, let's say, a country. They will have symbology, as we have right in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol building, and surrounding the Capitol, all kinds of symbology and occult numerology built into it as well. The large eagle, the owl of Minerva, is actually carved out. If you look at Washington, D.C., from an aerial photograph, you will see that large occult owl known as the Owl of Minerva is actually built into the street layout of Washington, D.C. There's also an inverted pentagram built into just around the Capitol complex. So the secret societies have been guiding these people, and they encrypted the dollar bill with the all-seeing eye pyramid, basically, like, as I mentioned, when pirates take over a ship, to show the rest of their secret society members, maybe in other countries, that we have now gained control over this vessel. And that, of course, was done in 1933 by FDR, but that symbol predates 1933. If you look at the steps of that pyramid, and if you count them, it's extremely difficult to do because of the size of those stones, but another researcher actually counted them, and there's 234 stones on that pyramid that comprise it from its base up to the top, right where the all-seeing eye is resting. 234, as in the Bible, a day, it represents years in their dating. 234 years, if you have your calculator, calculate what year it brings you to when you add 234 years onto the year 1776. That brings you to the year 2010. Guess what happened? Because most of you are going to say, well, I know 9/11. I know the assassination of President Kennedy. I know all these other dates, the bombing of Pearl Harbor and other dates. But what happened in 2010? Well, something very important happened in 2010. That was the completion of the European Union, of all the nations of Europe surrendering their authority to this new global superstate under the UN. And so 2010 is when they gained a major milestone. From the year 1776. They were able to, by the year 2010, have the nations of Europe surrender their national sovereignty and hand it over to the New World Order, meaning their constitutions that may have been based on biblical principles were now overwritten. The will of the people, freedoms, were now overwritten with a constitution that was drafted by the architects of the UN. And so we have the year 2010, is you could decipher it right from the dollar bill. The all-seeing eye is hovering above it. Now, the reason for that is that it's symbolic of when this pyramid is completed. After the completion of the pyramid, which is the constructing of their global New World Order, and by the way, folks, there's only one nation on earth that is not yet part of it. And if you guessed the United States, you guessed correctly. And that is why they are hammering away right now at the foundations, at the Constitution, at the freedoms, at the Second Amendment. They had to get Trump out because he's very pro-liberty, very pro-Second Amendment, making America great again, not wanting to become a global empire, but becoming a nation of national sovereignty. And I believe COVID was used to do this. So essentially, that's what you have. You have occult numerology and symbology that is on the dollar bill, as well as the pyramid that is at the grave site in Allegheny, I believe it is, right outside the greater. Is it the Pittsburgh Lodge?
Yeah, in fact, it's in Pittsburgh. Hey, Reese, I just want to make a comment here because we're on 4 different networks broadcasting. We are on YouTube Live, well as Facebook, Big 6 Screens Video Suite, and our telephone line. But I just want to make an announcement here. What we do on the 6 Screens, for friends, there's 2 camps of people that get out of the Jehovah's Witnesses. There is one camp that still has a Christian flavor, and they're still our brothers and sisters, right? I'm a Christian man. Now, also, there's another camp that gets out of the Witnesses, and they are atheists or non-believers. So there are 2 camps. Now, I know that there's many people that are interested in what Reese is speaking about here tonight. And there's also a camp that doesn't see much value in it. But what we do with the 6 Screens that no other network does, no other YouTube videos do, we cover all the bases. We talk about satanic ritual. We talk about theological connection. We talk about everything you want to hear in the Watchtower. Now, I get comments I see coming through on Facebook that, Rick, this is not going to help a new witness get out. I'm going to tell you something. That's one of the very things that got me out, listening to some of this. And I got a call from a woman just last week who was still in the Jehovah's Witness organization. And she told me that she wanted to learn more about the Illuminati. She told me she wanted to learn more about the Russell occultism and that connection. So even though there are people that, if you don't believe in God, you're not going to believe in the devil. You're not going to believe in all of this Masonry, Illuminati stuff. But for those that are Christians and understand the devil, they get this. They understand there's a new world order set in place. But I'm not going to force feed you. But we allow everyone to have a voice here on the 6 Screens. And that's what Reese is doing. So you can listen to him, and you can, when we open up the lines, you'll have questions. He'll entertain. He's not going to run the other way. Yeah. So go ahead. Yeah.
Why don't we shift gears? Because I've got a lot more interesting topics to talk about. I thought some of the newer listeners maybe didn't chime in last time. I'd be happy to move on.
All right. Well, let's hold.
Talk about.
Well, let's hold right here. Why don't we, before we move to another topic, why don't we open up the lines and see if someone wants to say something?
Sure.
So if you'd like to say hello to Reese, if you question anything that he has said here, this is an excellent time to come in and ask him a question, talk to him, and we'll love to answer anything that you're happening to have a question about. Go ahead, you're on with us.
Hey, Reese, old buddy, Dick Borgie.
Oh, hey, Dick, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to hear your voice again. Good to hear your voice.
My guests have been grossly exaggerated.
Got a question for you. Is it your understanding that Russell got his financing from B'nai B'rith and they got their financing from the Rothschilds?
Absolutely. I could provide convincing evidence of that. Here's what happened. If you want it in a nutshell, here's what took place. The New World, this is why I went back and forth from the New World Order to the Watchtower. New World Order to the Watchtower. Here's why. At the time that Russell created, and there was many groups like Russell around the 1860s, 1870s, the architects here in America, they had already co-opted Freemasonry. So they infiltrated the country after its founding. They got into Freemasonry. They got Giuseppe Mazzini to get Albert Pike to make it the 33rd degrees. And that was their launching pad for basically getting into politics at every level, the high courts, taking over finance and captains of capital. So now Russell, they're looking for somebody that they could use because they needed somebody who had a powerful new movement that could be co-opted. Now, the Catholic Church was not a candidate because the Catholic Church, with all the criticism we hear about them, I will tell you this much. If you look at Pope Leo XIII in particular, he lived concurrently with Russell, he had made these papal announcements, basically warning the faithful of the evils of Freemasonry and that their plans were to try to, through subterfuge, take over our nations. And so they knew they couldn't do it through a major institution. Mainstream Protestantism would have been on guard against them. So they found a guy, and I believe it was because of Russell's Masonic connection, that Frank Goldman and Samuel Untermeyer, in their, let's call it a directory of people, came up with Russell. Somebody maybe in that Allegheny Lodge said, hey, look, there's this really charismatic guy, and we think this might be just the guy you're looking for. He started off a new movement. He's extremely good at speaking publicly, and Russell was. If you read that book, when he gave those speeches at the New York Hippodrome, they said he could keep an audience in rapt attention for hours. He could speak without notes for 2 hours, Russell. This guy was, you have to give, I don't want to say the devil his due. I don't think he was all evil, but I think he was being used by them. So what happened was, they co-opted him. The details of how they made contact, we will never know. It's like trying to find out how August Belmont and Judah P. Benjamin were receiving communication from Rothschild agents who were located in Canada when they were setting up the assassination of President Lincoln. They burnt the notes. Every time they got one and they read it, they burnt it. So very few of them ever survived. But there's enough eyewitnesses and people that came forward to confirm that these events actually took place. So they were looking for somebody like Russell because they needed someone who could print the literature that they could distribute to promote Zionism. And here is what is the really important point. Zionism, the movement to create a new state in Palestine for Jews, was a creation of these architects of the New World Order. And they were looking to promote it because most Jews at that time were not interested in it. Most Jews were happy. The ones that lived in Russia or Germany or Poland were happy where they were. They were not being mistreated. The truth is, many who lived in the ghettos lived in those ghettos because they preferred living with people of their own kind, speaking Yiddish or Hebrew with them. They weren't being persecuted for the most part, so they didn't even really want a part of Zionism. You know how they got those get them interested? Rothschild, this is back in the 1890s, started funding insurrectionists in those countries to start instigating trouble in the Jewish community and persecution, to make those Jews then say, hey, we may need to escape from these countries. And maybe this idea that Herzl, who was, the guy that founded Zionism, one of the founders at least, maybe this isn't such a bad idea. And so there were well-intentioned Jews that wanted to have a homeland. Some of them were fleeing genuine persecution, but the overseers of these people were actually occultists and Satanists that were hoodwinking them and using them to achieve their agenda. And by the way, I could name very prominent Jews, one of which is Barry Chamish, a very faithful Orthodox Jew, who you've got to hear him speak. If you think I'm being strongly worded, you've got to hear his denunciations of Zionism and what it did to the Jews and what it has done to the faith of the Jews. For instance, Zionism brought about largely an atheistic state in Palestine. Most people don't know this, but the majority of Jews in Israel nowadays are atheists. They don't know that Theodor Herzl himself was an atheist or an agnostic. He was actually a practicing Buddhist, Herzl. And that's a fact. That's verifiable. You won't hear that mentioned on any of your Christian broadcasting networks, but that's the truth. And as a matter of fact, Herzl had an awakening to what was being done. And he started giving a little backlash towards Rothschild about the nature and the details of setting up this state. And that's why they had Herzl taken out and replaced with someone that was more amenable. And so what they did is they approached Russell because they needed someone to use to print the literature. It was a magazine that was called Der Stim. And that was a Zionist journal that was spread all throughout Europe in various languages that almost no Watchtower members, no witnesses know, was produced in Brooklyn, Bethel. So the agreement was, if you're willing to produce and distribute these leaflets for us, these brochures, we'll give you the funding for the printing complex that you want to open up in Brooklyn. That was the agreement that they made. The other agreement was that you would give these speeches in New York City at the New York Hippodrome, which was a very large arena. And they filled it with thousands of people. Russell was speaking about this new concept of Zionism that Jews had never heard of, returning and repatriating to a homeland, and it had a tremendous appeal. And so he served several purposes. And they were just using him towards that end. But I do believe, again, going back to Russell, that the reason they chose him was specifically because they knew that he was occult. He was in the occult network. And one day, Dick, you heard my previous broadcast I did on this. I will give you many more facts that I'm bringing out here tonight to confirm this. But in any case, Untermeyer and Frank Goldman, who, by the way, Frank Goldman then went on to become the first president of B'nai B'rith. And by the way, B'nai B'rith is Jewish Freemasonry. That's what it is. It's a Jewish secret society. It's not a Jewish religious organization. It's more of a secret society. It doesn't mean that they're worshiping the devil. I don't believe that they are, but it's kind of like American Freemasonry. Most American Freemasons are not secretly worshiping an inverted pentagram or have a hexagram under their bedroom carpet. Most of them are just members of a guild, members of a bricklayer or carpenter's guild, musicians. It's only those at the highest level, like Untermeyer and Goldman and others, Knights of the Golden Circle in particular, that know that the inner sanctum is involved with a conspiracy that the rank and file have no knowledge of. But go ahead, anyone else? I'm going on here at length. I'm sorry. If anybody else would like to ask a question, please call in.
Hit *6 if you want. Reese is on here. Be glad to hear what you have to say. Go ahead. You're on with us.
How's it going, Rick? How's it going, Reese? Thanks for coming
Always
back.
Good.
How do you feel about today, the COVID issue, and the end times prophecy seems to be heading towards the east in terms of the Palestinian issue flaring up again recent?
Did you say the Palestinian issue? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there was just a lot of tension over there recently.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, here's what's going on. And I have to say, I am not anti-anybody. I had many Jewish friends over the years. Some of my, matter of fact, Stuart, a guy named Stuart Olshin, a witness, a wonderful person, really my best friend, one of my very best friends I ever knew. The guy had a heart of gold. He was very funny and very intelligent. The guy was like Mensa Society smart. We used to enjoy having lengthy dialogues. It ended up leading him into trouble as it did myself, because you're not allowed to question things too deeply with this cult. But there's many righteous Jews. One of them I'll name right now, Benjamin Friedman. Benjamin Friedman knew of Untermeyer's plan and others to conspire against the United States to construct Zionism, but under the phony pretext that it was really for a homeland for the Jews. And right now what's happening is that it looks like they're going to blackmail those Israelis. I don't know, did you know that, who was it that made the statement that Israel will probably not exist in 10 years? Let me just go back. It's been a while since that one was. The state won't be around. Matter of fact, as I remember who that was that made that statement. Oh, Kissinger. That was Henry Kissinger. And again, you could look this up online. You'll find out this is verifiable. He said about 4 or 5 years ago, Israel will no longer exist in about 10 years. When somebody at the level of Henry Kissinger, and he's in the inner sanctum of these people, says it, you could pretty much take that to the bank. Right now, there's a large outflow of Israelis to Argentina. They're moving to Patagonia, again, quietly. They're not reporting on this, but many of them are moving out of Israel, and they're buying up huge parcels of land and relocating to Argentina, which, by the way, is really, there's some, how should I say it, irony with it, especially since Hitler actually did not die in the bunker in 1945. He and many of the heads of the SS and high-ranking members of the German Reich actually went to Argentina and lived in Bariloche. You can go there today and see his residence. There were witnesses that went forward. He lived there for many decades. So I just found out there was a deal that was made with Hitler. He agreed to transfer all the science technology here, which gave us our space program to allow us to have the lunar program. And the agreement was, if you keep a low profile, we won't send the ADL after you or other people from the U.S. State Department. We know where you are in Argentina. Matter of fact, there is a letter confirming this from the U.S. State Department at the end of one of the books that I read, that they knew that he was down there, but they kept it quiet because of the deal that was made. So they transferred all the technology over in exchange that if you live a quiet life, we'll tell everybody you and Ava Braun died in the bunker. Ava Braun lived there to a ripe old age. I think she outlived him. He died in 1960. When was it? I think it was mid to late 60s. He passed away. Ava Braun lived even longer. And it's rumored that they had a child who moved to, I think it was Mexico, fled somewhere else in South America or Mexico for fear of someone maybe finding out the identity. As a matter of fact, when they found out where Hitler was, he moved from his first residence, which, by the way, is an exact replica of his eagle's nest in Germany, an exact replica in Bariloche, to a new location. I just can't think of the name of it now. In any case, I found a grand irony there that they all moved down to Argentina. Anything else you'd like to discuss?
What about the Temple Mount situation and the Dome of the Rock? Why didn't Allenby take the Dome of the Rock? Why is it there? If it's the most holy site for Israel, why is the Dome of the Rock there? The Dome of the Rock says that God has no son. There is no three. So it denies Christ and it denies the Godhead. And when a witness goes door to door, they're essentially doing the same thing. They deny that Christ was the Son of God, and they deny the Trinity, which is not in the scriptures, but Godhead is. So we can see the Islamist Masonic flair through the Jehovah's Witness, who is sent door to door to renounce Christ, to renounce the Holy Spirit, and then leave subliminal demonic literature at the residence. So the Church of Satan couldn't do the job.
One
so if there's a new world order religion, this will be it, right?
Yeah, because here's what's important for you to understand out there. When you hear me mentioning people like Samuel Untermeyer or Frank Goldman that have Jewish-sounding names, These people do not have a worldview based on Old Testament eschatology or even the belief in the Torah as a traditional, let's say,
Is it more Talmud over Torah?
The Talmud, yeah. See, that's the other 800-pound gorilla that's not allowed to be discussed. The holy book of many of the Orthodox Jews, and I don't want to go into this too much because it is absolutely a verboten subject to go into. I know YouTube channels that were shut down.
Is that the Babylonian captivity?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be the Babylonian captivity? And while in captivity, they were influenced by the Babylonians, and they pretty much were introduced to the Mosaic Act, and the Talmud itself might be the word automatic writing, right?
Yeah, you're right. The Talmud, it took centuries.
There are a lot of rich incantations in the Talmud.
Yes.
So that God had them carried away just for that blindness, to be that stumbling stone. And God did that to them. He prophesied it in Joshua 23 and Numbers 33.
Right.
But caller would be from God.
Right, caller. Let me just say this. Let's not get too, and believe me, I'd love to have a discussion on scriptures, but people here get turned off by it.
Yeah, I just wanted to reference those two, just to get it started, that the Talmud issue, and then later on where they deny Christ, they're carrying out prophecy through these mechanicals.
Right. Let me say this about that. You're absolutely right. What happened was when the Jews were deported to Babylon, basically for practicing occultism, child sacrifice, and other abominations, in those 70 years of captivity, the Babylonians had a way of basically cleansing you of your former identity, and they introduced some of the leaders. And we don't know the details because I don't know anyone who's unearthed documents about the religious leaders and the transition they went through in Babylon, but we do know this. When they emerged from Babylon after the 70 years of captivity, their views were no longer based, at least a large number of them. There was a faithful remnant, and that was the remnant that led up to Christ. Of course, we know that, the tribe of Judah and Benjamin in particular. But many of the
leaders... So when you say remove identities, you're talking of satanic ritual abuse in a certain way?
Oh no, I mean even national identities. What they used to do is they used to force intermarry you. If they brought you into Assyria or Babylon, they would force interracial marriage. They would make you marry someone of a different culture and religion so that they would ethnically cleanse you. And so, but again, that's another discussion. Let's just discuss the origins of the Talmud going back to Babylon. They developed a book called the Zohar and Kabbalah, which was mysticism, and the Talmud.
That was sabotaged every Jacob print, right?
That's later. Again, that's centuries later. Now you're talking about the 15th century, 16th century.
Would you say even Solomon's demon worship, and then the Sodomites came in after? In the Chronicles, the Sodomites came in after Solomon's demon worship was introduced from Hiram and building the temple in the first place?
Yeah, but you know what? We're going to go too off. I don't want to go too far off on a tangent here. All right, we got to let's stick to what's the important point.
Hey, Reese, this is Rick coming in. Where we're running now, we got 20 minutes left, and this is just let me just say to the audience what's going on here. This is Reese. Reese is a former Jehovah's Witness. You've been listening to him on YouTube and Facebook and on our networks that we're broadcasting over. Reese, like I say, is a former Jehovah's Witness that really seriously gets into rabbit holes or goes down rabbit holes, finding out information that is controversial at times. Not everyone is going to agree with Mr. Reese, but at the same time, he's done his research and he's willing to take questions. So we got about 20 minutes, Reese. Now, I'm just going to bring up a couple of things. This is just like a trailer. Reese is coming on here tonight to give you a little understanding of what he discusses. Beginning next week, he's going to have a program of his own. It's called Watchtower and the Occult Connection. It'll be on next week, beginning next week, and every 2 weeks at 9:30 p.m. And he'll get deeper into the Russell and the occultism. He's going to also get into the UFO phenomena that's taking place, alien abduction. He's going to be talking about that. He's also going to talk about the Federal Reserve and how the Rothschilds were behind a lot of that setting up of the reserve. A lot of these subjects that can really bring the Watchtower into all of this, because one thing that was mentioned at the outset, Charles Taze Russell, if you guys out there believe in the Illuminati, not everybody does. I'm not going to try to force you to believe it. But if you believe in the Illuminati, there's a bloodline. Certain families are in it. The name Russell is one of the lines, one of the names and the bloodlines of the Illuminati. So this is all really deep stuff. I'm getting a lot of comments here on YouTube.
Okay.
Reese. Now, there are people saying, well, we love Reese. And then you have the most, you have the most, well, we have some more people coming in, but some people love you, some people don't. But I said Reese has an opportunity to, at least those who want to listen in can. And I'll tell you, your retention rate.
Let me say a few things. Well, let me just do this because we don't have time. Let me just speak extemporaneously here. And if you're wearing a tinfoil hat, I'm going to make you go into full meltdown with what I'm going to tell you right now. Because let's not get caught up in details. Let me tell you a little bit of the research that I've done, the topics I'd like to discuss. Here's a couple of them without going into any detail. Again, we went into Russell already, that he was a member of Rosicrucianism and Scottish Rite Freemasonry, that he was nothing, that he was not just nothing, but he was largely a puppet, a pawn in the game of the New World Order plans. The creation of Zionism was an essential element of this New World Order, which we'll go into in another discussion for another day. And that Russell was funded by members of the Knights of the Golden Circle, which is one of the most powerful occult secret societies in American history. Now, let's talk about aliens and ETs. I have a very unique take on aliens and ETs. I believe that the alien ET phenomenon is not something of beings that are coming from another planet. I believe they're not what they purport to be. I believe, first of all, that we have had the technologies for anti-gravity saucers since the Second World War. As a matter of fact, we know that the Germans had a program that would produce what is called the Glock, which we brought over here after the end of the Second World War, which was a prototype of an anti-gravity flying saucer. We also know that the agenda to promote all of this ET, extraterrestrials are here, let's say a worldview, has been directly funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, specifically by Winthrop Rockefeller. He was given that task to promote all these authors, the Stephen Greers, the Zachariah Sitchins. I could name a host of them. They were funded by Rockefeller because it was basically hammering away at your biblical worldview. And so I will go into that on another program. Let's go to another topic. Both World War I, World War II, and the coming World War III were all planned back in 1871, decades before even World War I broke out, by that 33rd degree Freemason I made reference to, Albert Pike. His letter was in the London Museum for many decades. It was removed when Rothschild had a curator put in there that removed the letter, but it was there, and there's copies of it that still exist, in which all three wars were scripted in detail of what the outcomes would be and what the wars would be fought over, even using words like Zionism and fascism before these concepts even existed. Here's another topic. That's a current global COVID outbreak was not due to some accidental leak in the Wuhan lab or due to some wet market, but is also an essential plank of the global elite's takeover in their final push to bring about the collapse of the United States economy, and I believe the global economy, to get Trump out of office through the massive vote fraud that took place in the election, which was, of course, facilitated through, the mail-in voting due to the suppression of voter turnout, and, of course, other things like rallies that were not allowed to take place. Here's another topic. Did we ever step foot on the moon with the Apollo missions of 1969? I'm telling you, I don't believe we did. And I didn't just read some page that you might see on or watch some YouTube video, although there's a very good one called a funny thing happened on the way to the moon by Doug Sibral, an excellent film for anyone to watch as a good starting place. But I believe that Apollo 11 lunar lander was actually orbiting in Earth's outer orbit and never went to the moon. What we were shown on film was an elaborate hoax that was made in a combination of the Nevada desert and an indoor airplane hangar, which an eyewitness saw it set, including the sand that is exact replica of what you see on the footage, and even the space suits, the 3 space suits hanging in that hangar. I believe it's in the state of Michigan. So I don't believe we ever went there. And I certainly, when you look at, we'll go into it in another program, when you look at the countenance of Buzz Aldrin and Collins and Neil Armstrong with their heads down, going into deep depression, alcoholism, never wanting to speak to the public. Folks, if you just won an Olympic gold medal, you would be out there with a huge smile, wanting to meet anywhere people would give you an audience. These men hid away in seclusion. And then there's Doug Grissom, who was murdered in a huge explosion, fireball, because he went public and started, before the Apollo launch, started hinting that this whole thing was a sham. So that's another discussion we'll go into on another day. And again, there's researchers that have gone into this even at greater depth than myself, but I'm giving you the benefit as someone who spent a lot of time reading the books and learning from them. How about this one? Celebrities that have died. I'll tell you what, I predicted a week ago that a prominent person was going to die around around June. April's another date I'm going to give you in a moment. Around June 23rd to 24th. Do you know how I predicted that? I predicted that the same way I told someone when I was on a ski vacation back in 2016 that a famous celebrity or a famous musician was going to die within the next few days, because knowing how the occult networks operate, these sacrifices, many times there are deaths that look like an accident, like Kobe Bryant's helicopter crash, and the death that I'm referring to now was John McAfee, the guy that died in the Spanish prison, happen on supermoons or right on or very close to a key date on the satanic or occult calendar. And as I say, the girl that I met in a bar out there, we were talking over a beer, she saw me a few nights later when the news of Prince's death came out. And I said, I didn't know it was going to be him, but I knew it was going to be a celebrity of his rank. And I'm telling you, I was very sorry to hear about Kobe Bryant, because he was probably really the most honorable of any athlete. I mean, basketball or other sports, this guy was a great guy, as good as they get. Loved people, loved all people. He's not, no chip on his shoulder, no activism, no taking a knee. This is a guy that was a Christian man. And they sacrificed him and his beautiful daughter in that helicopter crash, which is, it's impossible for a helicopter being piloted by a veteran airline pilot that is being maintained meticulously to have a catastrophic crash like that. So we'll go into that on another broadcast. And let's see, did I miss anything?
Well, it sounds like you're pretty close there, but we've had some people coming in, then they leave, they want to speak up, but we'll see if we can get them back in, Reese. But I just want people to know that, you're getting a lot of good, favorable comments on YouTube. We're live on YouTube. People do like it. And I just want to let people on YouTube and Facebook know that Reese has his own program, as we say, coming up next week, Watchtower and the Occult Connection. Now, that won't be live on YouTube, and that program will not be live on Facebook. But if you want to listen to Reese next week, what you'll do is you can come into the Six Screens Telenetwork. You can call in, and the telephone number, if you want to get a piece of paper and a pencil, let me give you the number. You can call in next week, and you can listen on your telephone. 727-731-6701. 727-731-6701. You can also go to the 6 screens of the watchtower.com. Scroll down. I'll give you that number there as well if you missed it. 6 screens of the watchtower.com. also you can get into our video suite. You'll be able to see Reese on there next week, and you'll be able to hear him, and there's a chat room in there as well. So try the 6 screens video suite out. All right, Reese, we got about 10 minutes, so we do have a number of people on with us. Go ahead, you're on 6 screens. Go ahead.
Hey, this is Mike. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, how are you? Yeah.
Doing great.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. I just wanted to give you some verification. Everything that you're saying is 100% true. I've been down this rabbit hole for the past 10 years. Actually, it's been about 10 years. And, man, I just want to tell the viewers, everything that this man is telling you is 100% true. Now, you brought up NASA. So I kind of wanted to bring something into it. Have you ever seen the Deborah Tavares NASA War Documents interview?
Yes, I've actually heard her a number of times. Yes, I have.
Okay, well, for the sake of the viewers, if you guys ever, YouTube keeps pulling this video down. Like, if you put it up, they pull it down right away. But if you go on there and put in Deborah Tavares, NASA War Documents, you should find an interview in there and just listen to the interview. And it might bring a lot of light to, this whole evil system that you're talking about and their plans. And they even talk about in those documents warfare against us by 2025.
Okay.
They talk about weapons being used.
Yes. Let me just say this about
okay, go ahead.
If you have these listeners listening to Deborah Tavares, you're going to scare the hell out of them, because what he's talking about are things, first of all, it does not provide what I provide. What I do is I show you how this entire New World Order progression, starting from, let's say, 1776, but preceding that by several centuries, for simplicity, we'll say the origination of the Bavarian Illuminati from the secret societies. This ties in with those that have a biblical worldview, or those that are just believe that the world is run by conspiracy, as I do. So, in other words, I want to give them something meaningful that can give them basically a narrative that shows them something about where we're headed, how we got here, and who's behind it. Deborah Tavares puts out a lot of good information, as does Dane Wigington. But I'll be honest with you, I had to turn Dane Wigington off the other day when I was listening to him, because it was just too much for your mind to process. It's too much. So
yeah, I agree. Right. When you just get into it, especially, I think you're right. That's for more seasoned people that they have been down that rabbit hole, and I would agree with that. So if they're just hearing this kind of stuff, I would suggest maybe not diving into that.
Hey, listen, I'll say this, Mike. I've been on air, and I had some really, let's say, unwelcome responses just to the information that I'm discussing here tonight. I know information. So this is the problem here. I don't know if people can handle it. That famous expression from a few good men, you want the truth. Most people can't handle the truth. And I'm going to go one step further. Most people not only can't handle the truth, they spend their entire adult life avoiding the truth. And this is what I found. But I'm here for those that have an open mind, and they want to see what's going on. Kind of like that scene with Neo in the Matrix. Do you want to be red pilled? Do you really want to see how deep the rabbit hole goes? And I'm telling you, I've gone way down this rabbit hole, and I've gone way beyond just the frontline stuff that you get from people like, let's say, an Alex Jones. And, again, I'm not talking them down, but you're not going to get in-depth knowledge unless you do your own reading and research and look at primary documents on your own. So that's what I've done. Now, let's just say this. How about this? What if I was to tell you that I believe right now that this entire globe is under this network of control, satanic, occult, Rothschild controlled, largely Rothschild, but not just Rothschild. There's other names I could name, but we all know Rothschild, so I mentioned that name. That George Bush, H.W. Bush is a major player, as is Henry Kissinger.
Oh, yeah.
How about this one? Did you hear the broadcast I did on how the sinking of the Titanic was no accident? That was actually arranged by J.P. Morgan and Rothschild.
Yeah, because there was a lot of people on that boat that they needed to go down. Yes, I know that whole story. That's interesting you brought that up.
No, there was a lot of people that needed to go down because that was an occult ritual We'll go into that in another program, and I'll show you why the date of April 14th was selected on another program. But what I'm talking about is the three people of very high prominence, namely Jacob Astor, Guggenheim, and Isidore Straus, that were specifically invited aboard that ship on its maiden voyage by J.P. Morgan at the behest of Rothschild. And at the last moment, J.P. Morgan jumps ship, takes all of his priceless valuables, his grand piano, his sculptures with him, and leaves the three bankers aboard, because those three bankers were campaigning unrelentingly against the establishment of a Federal Reserve central bank controlled by unknown owners, European owners, that would take over the issuance of currency in the United States. And so what they did is they got rid of those three with the sinking of the Titanic, but it wasn't actually the Titanic that was sunk, which is really not material for what we're discussing. It's important to understand why the Olympic was the ship, why it was sunk, and that's because the Olympic was no longer seaworthy because it had got into a number of collisions, and they had to dispose of it. So what they did is they said, all right, you know what we'll do? We'll take the nameplate and put the Titanic on it. We'll switch it with the Olympic, which there is a huge amount of evidence for it, including witnesses that were there in Belfast when it was done. And so what they did is they disposed of the ship, gained a huge amount of money back then. I think it was $100 million for a ship that was no longer seaworthy, and disposed of those three pesky bankers that was raising hell by having full-page ads run in the New York Times and the Washington Post warning Americans not to allow this to take place.
Yeah, you definitely know what you're talking about, brother. You definitely know what you're talking about.
Let me read you.
That's what, real quick, and I'll let you go off because I'm going to unmute myself. I just want to say that's what I was talking about when I said people needed to die on that ship. Everything that man just told you, listeners, is exactly the truth. It's exactly what happened. All right, I'm going to unmute you guys. You go off.
Hey, Reese. Hey, Reese. We've got 2 minutes left, Reese. Then we have another. We're up against another hard program. So we got 2 minutes, but we get one more caller. I believe we got a couple on there, but. Okay. Go ahead. You're on with us, caller. Go ahead. You're next from Michigan.
Hello, Reese.
Yeah.
This is Ken from Michigan here. Nice to have you back and so forth. I want you to rest assured I support your program 100%. I was listening to it tonight with interest. Thanks for coming back, and nice to have you back. Look forward to the next program.
Okay, Ken. Believe me, if you thought this was interesting, this is only a primer. I'm just throwing a lot of stuff out there, kind of like a scattergun tonight. And actually, I didn't even get through what I wanted to get through. I'm going to end tonight by reading a few quotes. And if another caller does want to call,
we got another. We got them all coming in here now, Reese. Let's take another caller.
Okay,
we're going to go. Looks like a foreign caller or whoever that would be. Go ahead. You're on with us.
I defer.
Area code 123. Go ahead. Speak up. I'll unmute you. Hold on, sir. All right. Hit *6, caller. Caller 123. 123. Caller, hit *6. You're on with us. You want to speak up? Evidently not. He's on there, but okay, we got another one. Go ahead from California. Go ahead, sister.
Yes, hi, Reese. This is Constance. I'm calling from Northern California. How are you tonight?
Wow, this isn't Constance Company, is it?
No, it's not. You're from the East Coast, I'm from the West Coast, brother. Hey, I loved everything that you said, and I just wanted to add to this a little bit. Are you familiar with the Bohemian Grove that's here in Northern California?
Yes, I am. And may I just say a little bit more, just very briefly? If you don't believe this stuff is real, this is right out of the Old Testament, the old the sacrifice to Molech, which was started around 1879, in which every year heads of capital, world leaders, former and active presidents, prime ministers throughout Europe, and others meet in a secluded area outside of San Francisco called the Bohemian Grove, and they have a week-long debauchery, a session of debauchery, and of course hobnobbing with each other. But it culminates in a full-blown satanic ritual, an occult ritual, in which they declare to each other and to the world that they cremate the care that most of us are born with, that concern, that kindness that we have, towards our fellow man. And if you see it, it's mind numbing when you see what this occult ritual looks like, and to think that our world leaders are going there, and it's not covered by any media. Isn't that interesting?
Right, it is. In fact, people can watch it on the History Channel if they want to. But it's 2,700 acres that's in Russian River Valley, which is a couple of hours away from me. And it's, like you say, all the heads of state. And they have a 40-foot owl. It was interesting how you spoke about the Owl of Minerva. And they do, you know, a ritual. They do a ceremony, a ritual, and it is tied in with the occult. And, you know, we're talking all about the big players. We're talking about Obama, the Clintons, the Bushes, Reagan. We're talking about all of them, and it's very, very interesting. It's $25,000 for them to participate for about a week or two, and apparently there's a 15-year waiting list for those who want to, you know, become members. But anyway, it's all connected, honey, to what you're saying. It really is, because they'll even choose, you know, who the next president's going to be and so forth. And it's a lot of them are very much involved in this, in all those different secret societies. So I just wanted to say hello and thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you tonight.
All right, Constance, same here. And by the way, folks, if you haven't seen that movie Eyes Wide Shut, you might want to watch that film, because that film is, and actually there was 25 to 30 minutes redacted from that film after the original screening, which I think went even further into those rituals that they would not allow the public to see. No one has ever picked up those lost footage. No one has it, but the film itself has enough in there. Stanley Kubrick, I believe, was having a crisis of conscience himself, and he wanted to show the world what he knew, because remember, Kubrick was actually fraternizing with members, powerful members of these societies. And so I think he made that film as basically a swan song, you know, to tell the world, look, you better wake up, because this is the people that are ruling over you. And if you want to find out why your men and now women are being sent to fight in these useless wars, no one knows why we're in Afghanistan. No one even knows why we were sent there. That since we were sent there, we went from almost zero production of opium and heroin to the largest bumper crop of heroin the world has ever seen. If you want to understand why they seem not to care at all about veterans in America are committing suicide at the rate of, I believe, 20 a week. I mean, that's stunning. And it's not even mentioned. It wasn't mentioned anywhere in the political debates, you know, why they spread heroin, the misery of drugs and heroin.
Hey, Reese, we got to get moving here. This is good, though. We can take that up on another time. Yeah, we got another program this way. What they do is they bring guests on, and you know, if the guests don't come on, they'll leave. So anyways, great program. Thank you for coming on tonight and being with us. And now next week, now listen, I have to tell you, I want to tell Reese I appreciate him not bringing up, he knows a lot about COVID. He couldn't bring it up here tonight because we're on YouTube and we're on Facebook, and they give us trouble over that. But Reese has a lot to talk about when it comes to COVID. He'll be talking about that when we get on our own network when he's on next week. We can say whatever we want. No one's going to shut us down. Yeah. So we'll be all set, Reese. You can take your muzzle off next week.
Well,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reese. Thank you very much. All right. That's Reese. My goodness, next week, be sure to tune in, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, New York time. Well, Watchtower and the Occult Connection. Sure. Well, we are going now. We're going to leave YouTube. If you're on YouTube, you're on Facebook, go to 6screensofthewatchtower.com. You'll learn how to use the telephone to listen in and also come in on our video suite, 6screensofthewatchtower.com. We're now going to Heart to Heart. I'm going to end this video. Dan and Angela, hang on for just a minute or so. I've got to disconnect. Lines, you can hit *6 and you'll be able to speak up. But anyways, let's take a look. Let's see what's going on behind the curtains of the Watchtower this week. Boy, I'll tell you what, I don't know if you guys have been following this or not, but the Jehovah's Witnesses have a difficult story to deal with out in the state of Utah. As a matter of fact, the Jehovah's Witnesses are going to be in big time trouble. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. We discussed this before on JW World News, but we'll discuss it again. The Supreme Court in Utah has received a religious freedom dispute, instructing an Ogden, Utah court to take another look at a suit filed by a woman who alleged Jehovah's Witness leaders in her congregation subjected her to humiliating discipline as a teenager after she accused a fellow church member of rape. I don't know if you remember that or not, folks, but we've been discussing this story now for the last few years. This all took place in 2008, but it's been dragged through the court systems. The suit alleged initially that this woman was raped, and the elders inflicted emotional distress. They humiliated the girl, and they caused her a lot of anxiety in life. As a matter of fact, the judge in the district court, even though humiliation, let me just put it this way. Let me say it in my own words. So we had this teenage girl. She went in and filed a lawsuit against the Watchtower. She was raped. And when she went into the Judicial Committee hearing, there was 3 elders there. Her mother was there with her. Her stepfather was there with her. But she went in there and they played a tape of the actual rape. Friends, this is totally disgusting. So they played a tape of the rape, everything that was said during it, and they were accusing her of porneia. Well, we know what that is. That's sexual misconduct, right? How humiliating would that be to go into a judicial hearing and not knowing that this episode was taped, and then she had to hear that? Friends, that would cause tremendous emotional stress on anyone, wouldn't it? Well, she claims expressly that these religious questions regarding her standards and her way of conducting herself, that this is not right, what happened. They claim that, because of her conduct, that they were going to not go forward with the lawsuit. So what do you think of that? I mean, isn't that terrible? So now the judge that originally dismissed the case, the district court said, no, we're not going to hear it. Religions, now we know Utah is a very religious state, right? That is where the Mormon church headquarters is, in Salt Lake City. So there's a lot of Mormons. There's a lot of decisions that are made on religion that side toward religion. And in Utah, they figured that Jehovah's Witnesses had the right to discipline this young girl in any way they wanted. And the original court said, no, we're not going to catch it with a 10-foot pole. This is a religious matter, and it's been dealt with through a tribunal in the Jehovah's Witness organization. Do you think that's fair? I don't think it's fair at all. But, they did file an appeal. They filed an appeal, and they even lost the appeal. But then more attention came to this case, and the more the Supreme Court in Utah looked at it, they realized that this is an ongoing problem. We cannot allow this to continue. I mean, this poor girl, they said, she lost her self-esteem. She was totally embarrassed. She was disgraced. She was humiliated, loss of enjoyment in life, and spiritual suffering. This is what the Watchtower caused this young girl. What type of an organization would ever do anything like that to a poor young girl like that? Now, what happened here is the Watchtower is now being reinvestigated in the state of Utah. After examining this, and officials in the court, including even the Supreme Court of the United States, after looking at some of the extenuating circumstances regarding this court case, They realized that this was unbelievable. And now they're coming back and they're saying that the Jehovah's Witness organization, that religious institution, cannot exist in a vacuum or in total isolation from all of its other parts. In other words, on the surface, a religion can look pretty good to people. They encourage godliness, wholesomeness. So they have, at least the state recognizes there's good part to religion, but the state of Utah is now saying, wait a minute, there are also bad parts of religion. A religion cannot exist in a vacuum. In other words, nothing can penetrate through their decisions. So now, just this week, it's been announced that they're going to bring this case back to court, and the Watchtower is going to have to answer. I'll tell you, this is great. All of the media they're getting, it's in major newspapers, and anybody reading this story, friends, I have to tell you, they would be disgusted. See, the Watchtower organization, it is getting a tarnished image. People are finding out, the court of public opinion, they are finding out about Jehovah's Witnesses. And you know something? Many Jehovah's Witnesses are finding out too. They read papers. They see television programs and news articles. Many, many witnesses are leaving. This conduct by the Watchtower is reprehensible. It has no reason to gain popularity on the goodness of the Watchtower. It's not good. The Watchtower, every news article I come across doing our news broadcast here, and we've been doing it for 16 years, and every article I come across as of late is critical news about the Watchtower. Now, that wasn't always the case. When we started 16 years ago exposing the Watchtower, I have to tell you, there were some good stories in the news about the Watchtower. Well, it was always about in the summer, how the witnesses are meeting in Portland, Maine, in the meeting in San Diego, California. And they would, the news articles would say, wow, the witnesses are coming into town. Our hotels are filled. Our restaurants are booming. They're spending money. No more of that. They're not meeting in conventions like that in person anymore. It's all online. So the only thing coming across the internet concerning Jehovah's Witnesses is all critical, negative, cynical news regarding the Watchtower. I'll tell you that this is going to bring them down. I can't believe that an organization that has the tarnished image that the Watchtower has can continue much longer. You know, I've always said it, friends, the monkey died, the circus is over. The Watchtower's cooked. And that's why we're going to be talking about their media center too. That's going to be coming up on the news tonight. And we've got to stop this. We're going to be talking in depth about that media center. So stay with us. I want to thank you all for coming into JW World News. Man, I'm telling you, it's just amazing to me how many people have been listening in to our news broadcast on our radio network, on our telephone line. We're really glad to have you all. This is my favorite night of the week, friends. This is when I really get pumped up. This is when I really put the pedal to the metal. I love being an activist, exposing one of the most dangerous organizations on the planet. And you say, well, Rick, why do you say the Watchtower is dangerous? I'm going to also include another adjective. Not only are they dangerous, they're also destructive. This organization, when you join it, you do not realize the problems that you're going to encounter. Your family could be broken up. You could receive all kinds of problems, shunning, dying from refusing blood. It's a destructive organization. You're on with us. Go ahead. Let's hear what you have to say. Go ahead, Chewy.
This is Chewy, yeah. You talk about being destructive. I was over at a friend's house, best friend. I was in his wedding. He was in my wedding. I asked him how his son was doing. And he said, I don't know. I ain't talked with him in 2 years. Because it's his fellowship.
Yeah.
Doesn't have his phone number. He doesn't have anything. He has no idea how he's doing. You talk about having no natural affection. that's the epitome of not of having no natural affection. I went to another Zoom funeral this afternoon with the witnesses, and I had a son on there. His grandma passed away. She had a big family. She was right up there with Mom, man. She's like baptized in like 63, lived on the same street. Our families used to hang out together. We were close. And her son, her grandson kind of went off the haywire or whatever. He straightened himself out, but he's still not a witness. And he doesn't really believe the way the witnesses do. He goes to a separate church. His parents wouldn't even acknowledge him on the Zoom meeting. Everybody else saying hi to him. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? On the Zoom meeting, the parents wouldn't even say hi to him. Didn't even look in his direction. It was awful. So, yep, you're right.
Well, thank you, Chewy. That's exactly true, and that's why we say they're destructive, and that's why we say they're dangerous. And another thing, if you get in your study cults, well, let me just throw this out at the audience. There's plenty of cults. There's all kinds of cults. There's religious cults. There's business cults. There's cults that aren't dangerous. There's hospital cults. There's stock cults. There's a lot of different cults. But let me tell you something. In examining and researching cult activity, the most dangerous cults are the Christian cults. And they play on people's minds, just like the Watchtower does. They make it feel like when you get in there and join them and you get to know their ways of doing business, you feel that they are God's spokespeople. That this is very dangerous. This gets embedded in people's minds and hearts, that the Watchtower is, in essence, if you want to say it, it's synonymous with God. Many people think the Watchtower is God in their own. Now, they'll debate that if you ask them that, but they equate the organization to God. So you can see the pressure that's put on people. So a Christian cult who portrays this idea of, we are God's spokespeople can really mess people's minds up. It can make them feel so guilty. They don't know what to do if they ever left. They're leaving God's organization. Now, there are other cults that aren't dangerous. Tesla, I don't know if you watch business news, but they talk about Tesla as their stock, Tesla stock in the company, as being a cult stock. At times, they don't know why people buy it. Sometimes it even goes way down and people still will buy it. They're attracted to Tesla. Sometimes for no reason at all, they will buy stock in Tesla. And there's many stocks that are called cult stocks. And another thing too, Harley riders, those Harley riders that drive those big motorcycle Harleys, and they have the long hair and the beard, and they got tattoos and nose rings and bandanas. That's like a cult too, but they're not dangerous. They're not dangerous. They might look dangerous, but they're not dangerous. They're not messing up people's lives. But the Watchtower, a Christian cult, really is the most dangerous because you feel that you are attached closer to God. And when you leave, you just don't have anywhere to go because that was the so-called truth. Well, anyways, you're on JW World News, the Watchtower doesn't want you talking about, but we're talking about it here, right here. We do it every Saturday night. So why don't you join us every Saturday night? I think you'll find it really, really fascinating. Friends, I get information from a man who goes by the name Atlantis. Now, he's an insider. He is an insider at the Jehovah's Witness Watchtower organization. I don't know what position he serves in, but he sends me, along with other apostates, activists, he sends information, I'm sure, to Mike and Kimmy and John Cedars and others. But I thank him for sending me information. And we get these announcements. When we were in the Kingdom Hall, every week we went to the midweek meeting. And in the service meeting, they would always come up with announcements and reminders. right? And we'll all look forward to, oh, what's new from the Watchtower? Well, let me tell you, there's an announcement that came across this week. In fact, it was issued for June 1st, 2021. It's a strange announcement, but it's basically for all elders in Canada. And it says, concerning judicial matters, this announcement replaces previous direction regarding the need to hold all judicial matters in abeyance. In other words, up till now, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, judicial matters have been held in abeyance. Well, abeyance is, it's been put on, kind of like on hold. We'll get to it when we can. All of these judicial matters were suspended. Obviously, during COVID, nobody was meeting anywhere to do this. Unless it was really severe, they would disfellowship you on Zoom. But you can imagine for 15 months, Jehovah's Witness elders around the world have been holding off in disfellowshipping people. They suspended it. Well, now that things are coming somewhat back to normal, we're finding out that the Watchtower, at least in Canada, this is underlined Canada, this is not the United States yet. And sometimes I don't know why, when the Watchtower releases information, sometimes it's only, for a country like Canada or Spain, for example. We're going to read one tonight for Spain, but they don't do it for the whole world. And I have my own feelings on that. Friends, I know the Watchtower, when they dish out information, they send out trial balloons that they want to make sure everything is going to go over right. So they pick a little bit of information, they send it to a certain group of people, they see how it settles, and then they'll come forward with more information for other countries. But this is for Canada. They are now saying that you can meet in a kingdom hall. Most of the provinces in Canada can now meet. There's a couple that they have to take precautions with, and they don't want the witnesses meeting in the kingdom hall, the elders, to at least bring judicial matters to hand. So here we have it. In Canada now, if you are creating issues for the Watchtower, you now can be brought in. You've been put on hold for 15 months. So now you can be brought in to a judicial committee hearing in the Kingdom Hall, and you can indeed be, disfellowshipped. So that is something. And I have to say that, it's just in Canada right now. Well, why aren't they coming down on members in the United States? Well, we'll have to see. Right now, it seems like those in the United States have a get out of jail free card. We'll have to see what happens. Well, maybe because in the United States, there's so many issues with pedophilia that they don't want to, with pedophilia and other issues. There's a lot of witnesses here. There's over 1 million witnesses, according to their information. And, they don't want to lose a lot of people. So maybe right now this has been adding up. There might be thousands of people to be disfellowshipped, so they're going to go about very slowly. They need all the recruits they can get. They don't want to be kicking people out and their numbers going down. That's my own feelings on it, friends. Maybe you have different feelings. But anyways, I also wanted to speak up and let you be aware of other things as well. There's also another reminder, and this one didn't make any sense to me at all. It was to be read in the Spanish congregations, not in American congregations, but it was a Spanish-related announcement, and it was concerning the pandemic, and it was something for the body of elders to consider. And this went out in June, so they're reviewing this now, and they're updating it. But what it is, it's a 32-page announcement. I'm not going to get into all of it because we discussed it before. It's almost like they just copied and pasted the same thing they did a few months ago. And they were just telling the Spanish people to be very cautious about the COVID virus, to make sure you're taking all the precautions that you can take. and they were saying that the Watchtower has more information on this virus and the pandemic than even the Watchtower has more information than secular authorities. So they're still trying to create reasons for the witnesses not to go back to Kingdom Halls. Now, friends, we know right now that churches are opening up, sporting events are opening up, restaurants are opening up. So what is the deal here? Why is it that we don't have Kingdom Halls, readily getting opened? Convention sites, they're not going to convention sites. They're doing everything on streaming. Now, in the article, see, it's an old article. They just copied and pasted. This doesn't make any sense. In the article that I'm reading, that is a reminder to the Spanish congregation, they're talking about 5,000 deaths because of COVID. They were saying 5,000 people died because of COVID. That is, Jehovah's Witnesses died. Now, that's not right. It's not true, because just last month on JW Streaming, I believe it was on Streaming 4, I believe it was Mark Sanderson, he brought out this 17,000 deaths. So they sent them an old, it was a 32-page article. They updated a little bit of it, but somebody wasn't on the ball. They didn't update it all. There's now, from what we understand, 17,000 people, Jehovah's Witnesses that is, have died from from COVID. Let's go with that, from COVID. So I'm just thinking here that it's amazing to me how the Watchtower sends these reminders out. But the thing that when I was reading through all of this, I come across something here in the 32-page article that I saw of interest. And it got my attention because, during the COVID pandemic, churches around the world were shut down too. Catholic churches, Protestant churches, mosques, temples, all the churches were shut down because of COVID. And if you went up to any of these churches, I know even here locally, and if you went up to any of these churches, they would have a sign on the door. And it would say, we're not meeting in person, but we're meeting online. Here is the link. Here is the password. Why don't you come in and join us? Well, they're making it very profound, very emphatic that the witnesses are not to do this. If the Kingdom Halls are still closed, by all means, they don't want you to put a sign on the door of a Kingdom Hall saying how to connect to the meetings. They are saying, don't put any passcodes on there. Don't put anything. Now, why do you think they're saying that? Friends, the other churches would put it right up there. So, if you're an individual and you express a genuine interest, they're saying, in coming to a Jehovah's Witness meeting, details to connect to the meeting can be provided to him. But they're not going to put all of these passwords and what have you on the door of a Kingdom Hall. And I think most of you know why. Who would like to step in here and tell me why? Why won't the Jehovah's Witnesses put the passwords? And, if they want. Yes, Anne-Marie.
Hi, thank you. I love it that you processed that. I think we all remember a good 2 or 3, maybe 4 years ago, they started having not just ushers at the conventions, but they were almost like heavy-duty security guards or Secret Service. Anybody coming toward their venue was scrutinized. Who are you with? What congregation? Where's your identification? Where's your badge? Who's your congregation presiding overseer? Whatever. And if they had somebody that was, say, an interested person, that person was often grilled. And more than a few actually said on the 6 screens, if I recall this correctly, maybe I just heard it on YouTube, I don't know. But I do remember several who were not actually baptized, who were coming because they had been strongly encouraged by their Bible study teacher to come to the convention. Remember, that's what we were always encouraged to do, Rick. As witnesses, we were encouraged to strongly encourage your study to come to the convention. We want to move them along toward baptism. And so many were being treated so badly, followed around, telling other people, watch them, telling them maybe you should leave, where's your card? They were scrutinizing them terribly. And also there were those who had been disfellowshipped who wanted to come back, who wanted to attend the convention, but were treated so badly. And it's like they're so secretive. They're acting like it's some special club, but it's really not. They don't want what they really are about, what they're really saying, what they're really teaching to get out. Otherwise, we'd have a whole new show on the 6-screen Saturday, Rick. Thank you.
Well, there you go, Anne-Marie. I'm with you 100%. My goodness, good comment. Well, we get more people. Yes, go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, I agree with Anne-Marie. I think that's the big thing. They don't want other people to know the twisted doctrines and the evil practices that they're doing, and they're showboating there in their meetings. So they just really careful about who they got in. But I asked the same question that you just asked about why they put that. Don't give out the code. Don't put it on the signs at the Kingdom Hall. Don't put it on your answering machines. I asked that in several Jehovah's Witness sites, and you know what they tell me? They're telling me that we do that so we don't get disruptions, because those apostates are trying to disrupt our meetings. And I mean, I came back with several things. I'm like, you mean kind of like having a big loudspeaker going on while people's having services and their family time and stuff? You mean disrupting like that? Because you remember that's how Jehovah's Witnesses did. But one guy, he told me, or I told him, I said, I understand how the ones came in, protesters came in or gave their testimonies inside Kingdom Halls, ones that had been hurt. But I said, here, this is different with Zoom. The Zoom host can control and turn off microphones and cameras. He can turn that off. So, that's why I think it's more like along Anne-Marie's sign. He came back with the zinger, though. He come back, he said, well, it's just not microphones and cameras. Somebody has got on there and hacked into it and started drawing penises on the screen. And I told him, I haven't told him yet, but I'm going to go back and say, that's terrible. I mean, I think that's disgusting. Not quite as bad as a Bethelite artist subliminally putting it on the back of their songbook, though.
Here you go. Isn't that something, Randy, huh? But I mean, the witnesses are scared to death. And I think that's one of the reasons, too, why they're dragging their feet, opening up Kingdom Halls once again. And even convention centers. They know darn well they have hurt so many people. And, of course, the Kingdom Hall crashes have come out. The protesters have come out. So this has got them frightened. They're saying, wow, when we go back, we're going to have to deal with some monumental issues. So thank you, Randy, for checking in with us. Wow, you're on. Yes, Chewy, go ahead.
Hey, I got a question for Randy. Randy, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, remember that molestation case over in McAllister? Was that the one that was on oxygen?
Yeah, Ronnie Lawrence.
Right. Okay, they got another one. Kim and Mikey, on one of their latest videos, they got another one in the same hall. It's a different case, but it's the McAllister hall. I got the court document.
Different pedophile, different molester?
Yes.
What's his name?
I ain't got my iPad on me. I could probably text it to you. I got your number. You got the number?
Just shoot it to me.
Yeah, I'll take a picture of it tonight and show it. But I got the actual court document. They're filing another case and indicting just what they said in Zalk and the same thing that was on.
I'm not surprised because that pedophile that was disfellowshipped, there was another elder going around after they were disfellowshipped. He was seen having dinner with this pedophile out, at a restaurant. I mean, here you're not even supposed to be associating with a disfellowship person, and they're hanging together. I just said, well, birds of a feather is probably hanging together.
Yeah. Okay, I was just curious whether I thought that was the same hall. I need to know. Hey
your wife's still going, right, Chewy?
Yeah, she's still going.
Well, it's supposed to find out for. Supposed to. I heard a rumor, and you can probably have her tell you, but that either tomorrow. It's going to be tomorrow, or it might be next week. But they're telling everybody to be there because a special announcement is going to be made about the Kingdom Halls. Have you heard that?
Oh, really? No, I haven't heard that.
Wow. It's just a rumor, so I don't know if that's anything true to it or not.
Yeah. Well, one thing I did want to comment because I got to go. Hey, Rick, remember that I got that email list that you did of all the halls and all the properties, and I was looking at it and I had to laugh. I had to laugh. This guy was down there in Louisiana. He was down in Louisiana when he did that video. Oh, we're just increasing. We're just increasing and all this and all that. I looked at that thing, that email list that you sent. They got upwards of 20 to 30 halls being sold in Louisiana.
Yes, wasn't that quite the list, huh?
Yeah, man, that one. I looked at that one. I actually Googled this one. I Googled them in Oklahoma, and they were all. I fact checked everything. But that one, that big one that Anne Marie was talking about, the one where her mom lives at, right there in Honolulu.
Yeah.
That on the list, it was $7.6 million, and it had out to the side. It said Assembly Hall with 5 Kingdom Halls that met there, 5 congregations that met there. All right, I Googled it, and I put in the Jehovah's Witness, and then I Googled the address, and it had a picture of the Assembly Hall. It took you to that place on Google or wherever. Then you put it in there, and you put it in there without Jehovah's Witnesses. It's thinking pharmacy now.
Wow.
Yeah, they got $7.6 million for that one.
My goodness, huh? Geez, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Boy. Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, they keep selling it off. Thank you, Chewy. Thank you very much. Well, there you have it. I mean, that's Chewy. Friends, what you're looking at, you see it on your screen right now. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, you're looking at the gigantic mega center, the media mega center for the Watchtower. That is a proposed architectural rendering. There it is on 242 acres. We got over 645 apartments right around there. Recreation center, self-generating electric system. That is it. Friends, I'm impeding you. I am imploring you. I am doing everything I possibly can to get you to write a letter to Ramapo, New York, to stop the big media center that the Watchtower is proposing to build. Friends, we have to expose the Watchtower. It's just absolutely unbelievable that this town, a charming town in a beautiful, pristine area, is letting one of the world's most destructive cults come and continue to build their world headquarters in that area of New York. We have to stop the mega media center. I'm asking you if you could write a letter. That would be wonderful. And I have to say this, I'm going to tell you what's going on here. The Jehovah's Witnesses, this may be their last stand. This may be their last opportunity to keep their business afloat. We know that the house-to-house work, the cart witnessing, writing letters, calling people on the phone, it's not working going forward. It's not, friends. The Jehovah's Witnesses know it, not only the organization, but the witnesses themselves. Jehovah's Witnesses are losing too many people. They are hemorrhaging big time. They are hoping that these videos that they're going to produce in this mega media center, they're hoping that these videos and streaming programs can connect with people worldwide and bring in new recruits. They're not bringing new recruits in. They're telling you they are, but in essence, they are not. Now, you guys know, I talked about it before. I joined the Zoom meeting on May 26th. It was a planning board hearing I did all the necessary things I had to be able to join in on Zoom. They sent me the passwords. I came in. I wanted to voice my concerns about the watchtower. I wanted people to know in Ramapo and the surrounding areas how dangerous the watchtower is. The people up there have no clue how dangerous the watchtower is. So I wanted to alert the people on that Zoom meeting on May 26th, but you guys know what happened. I was shut down. But I called the planning board the next day. And I said, what's the story with this? I was peaceful. I wasn't obnoxious. I came in a very calm way. Why wouldn't you let me speak up and talk what was on my mind? I just wanted to alert the public. I'm saying up there that people do not know who the Jehovah's Witnesses are. So the woman I talked to at the Ramapo town office, she says she agreed. She kind of was listening in that night, and she said, yeah, I remember, Mr. Farron, you came in, but they shut you down. I says, well, who was that man that shut me down? I says, was he a lawyer for the Watchtower? Who was he? And she said, well, he was a hired lawyer, she thought, by the Watchtower organization. So, they knew there would be people opposing the Watchtower, like myself,